All right, good morning. Thanks for being here. Mark Ghilarducci, Director of Governor Newsom's Office of Emergency Services. Here at the State Operations Center, we're in the second operational period following the 7.1 magnitude earthquake that struck up in the Ridgecrest area. Let me start off by really conveying our continued thoughts and with all the folks that have been impacted by this and the communities. They have had a week-long series of earthquakes and an earthquake swarm, and then of course they had the large 6.4 and now the 7.1, and they have been through a lot, both in Ridgecrest in Kern County and in Trona in San Bernardino County. And so that whole area there, we are continuing to keep them in our thoughts and prayers and working very, very diligently to support all of their efforts. Today, as the sun came up, we started to get better situational awareness from local authorities and state assets that are on the ground in both communities. We're happy to report that there is damage. As we reported last night, there were a number of structure fires. There were gas leaks. The power was out for a majority of the communities. There was road damage, rock slides, etc. Things you would see in an earthquake of this magnitude. But the damage that we are seeing this morning in the light is not as extensive as one could have expected. Now, keep that in mind that we are going to be continuing to do extensive damage assessments. Will require a detailed review. And for those individuals and homes and the local governments that are continuing to respond, all assets continue to be provided, both fire and rescue, urban search and rescue, law enforcement, mutual aid assets continue to be made available and are engaged throughout the region. Last night, there was shelters that were open, and the population of the shelter reached just about 200, a little under 200. As a series of aftershocks are occurring, it's makes sense and logical that people would be a little bit concerned about being in their homes. And so we saw larger shelter populations last night. The Red Cross continues to support those shelters. But in addition, logistically, we have moved into place a significant amount of support in the way of cots, water, meals, and other commodities to make available as necessary. Also happy to report that the major grocery stores and commodity distribution points are back operational. That's a very significant positive step to ensure that those local supermarkets and other local community stores can be made available for individuals to be able to get supplies and food and other commodities as they begin to do their cleanup of damages. Still quite a bit of non-structural damage in each of the homes. People reporting things like glass breaking and shelves that have been overturned, etc. But there have been also structural damage to homes, and as I mentioned earlier, some structural fires predominantly driven by broken gas mains. Today, the power is virtually back on across the city of Ridgecrest. There's a small portion that still is out, and roughly 46 or so customers. And in Trona, the power is still generally out, working on that to try to get the power back up today. In addition, water is they're finding not as big of an issue, although we've got water commodities available should it be necessary. Right now, both communities are reporting that they have enough water. So those critical lifelines are important and continue to be monitored by us. The state will, of course, as you know, yesterday, Governor Newsom did request from the White House a presidential emergency declaration The emergency declaration is a declaration for immediate direct federal assistance. That allows us to turn to our federal partners and get life-saving assets. With us today is Bob Fenton, the regional administrator from FEMA. FEMA is already engaged here with us at the State Operations Center as a result of the quick request by Governor Newsom. FEMA has been providing already support for us on the ground. We're also deploying today damage assessment teams and structural engineers in support of Kern County and San Bernardino County, and that's really to go in and start looking at a little bit more granular review of the damage that has occurred. That helps us to build what are we looking at like in total losses, destroyed, damaged, major, minor, to be able to put that information together to make the request for a major disaster declaration. At this point, the State Operations Center is in Level 1 full operation, will remain this way until further notice. The governor has approved all assets of the state to be made available. He updated the state of emergency last night to include San Bernardino and to reflect the new damages associated with the 7.1 that occurred last night. Today, our effort is really going to be to continue to work with both San Bernardino and Kern County, and of course the cities, the town of Trona and the city of Ridgecrest, have had, again, further discussions with the elected leaders and the operational folks, police chiefs and fire chiefs in both communities this morning. That link is that communication link is working very well. Communications overall from cell capability and other communications modalities are working well, and that's also positive. And you'll hear a little bit in a minute that while we've had a significant amount of impact to our roads last night, throughout the night, Caltrans did an unbelievable job in working to get roads patched and fixed and rock slides cleared. While we're, of course, responding to this, we are monitoring the weather conditions. It is going to be in the high 90s, low hundreds over the next day or so. There will be some warm, gusty winds from 25 to 35 miles per hour. This is significant because of individuals possibly not wanting to go back in their home. We're going to want to make sure that there'll be enough cooling centers and other kinds of things like water and shade to make sure that we don't have secondary issues. We're also monitoring fire weather activity throughout that part of the state and other parts of the state with regards to potential for wildfire. And Chief Porter from CAL FIRE will mention that in a few minutes. So with that, I'm going to now turn it over to the Commissioner of the California Highway Patrol, Commissioner Warren Stanley, or talk about CHP's support.
Thank you, Director Ghilarducci. As far as the CHP, we have approximately 68 personnel assigned to this incident. Started out, most of them were escorting some of the big rigs that are carrying supplies up to the Ridgecrest, Trona area. We also have a number of personnel that are also providing law enforcement services to our law enforcement partners there, the police department, the sheriff's department, and the fire department. We also have 3 of our airships up there, 2 helicopters and an airplane. The helicopters are using their thermal imaging capabilities to look for additional gas leaks and fires, and they're also assisting with damage assessment. Our airplane is also helping to check out some of the roadways in the area to make sure they're clear and no additional damage. And Director Kim will talk about that in a few moments. Also, our officers on the ground that are providing that roving patrol, they're also checking on all the state facilities in those areas to try to do a preliminary damage assessment to make a determination that those offices can open on Monday when state business goes back into action. So that's what we're doing now. We have a great team working together, working here with the other state agencies and our law enforcement partners in the area of Ridgecrest and up in Trona. And with that, I'll turn it over to Major Baldwin.
Morning, everybody. The California Military Department has 300 personnel on duty in response to this incident. We're flying missions in support of other response agencies to move responders and supplies into the area. We are also going to be flying both manned and unmanned surveillance aircraft to assist with damage assessment. We've moved 200 personnel in the vicinity of the incident to be ready to respond to requests for support from law enforcement or any other agency. And the rest of the California National Guard and California State Guard are ready in the event that additional military capability is required. We've coordinated with officials at the Pentagon, and if we need additional out-of-state support, they've committed that they'll be able to help us quickly if that's necessary. I'll be followed by Chief Tom Porter from CAL FIRE. Oops, I'll trip over.
Good morning. CAL FIRE, California's fire department, is fully staffed at peak levels to support this event, as well as be prepared for any wildfires that may occur throughout the state during this period. Also, our Office of the State Fire Marshal is engaged with pipeline inspections under their jurisdiction and certifying that those are being done, and the petroleum pipelines that they are looking at are safe to operate, and assessing, along with DGS, our responsibilities under the state building assessment. Thank you. I'll be followed by David Kim, Secretary, California Transportation Agency.
Good morning. There is good news to report on the status of roadways impacted by last night's event. All repairs have been made. All roads are now open. As the director indicated at the outset, in particular, State Route 178 sustained significant damage last night. Caltrans crews worked overnight to repair that damage. They also cleared all rock slides on State Route 178, State Route 127, and State Route 190. Also, all state bridges have been fully inspected and cleared for safety. And finally, Caltrans staff is in touch with local officials to provide any assistance for any needed inspections. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Marco Meach, Deputy Secretary, Health and Human Services.
Thank you. Good morning. We have fully activated across our agency, and that includes the Emergency Medical Services Authority, the California Department of Public Health, and the California Department of Social Services. Secretary Galley is in communication with the local hospital, and we are not tracking any unmet needs at the time. We're also looking and are in contact with all the medical, health, and community care facilities in the region and are not tracking any unmet need. As Director Ghilarducci noted, we do have a shelter that is active in that area, and we're not tracking any unmet need at that shelter either. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bob Fenton. I'm the FEMA Region 9 Regional Administrator. We've been coordinating closely with the State of California Office of Emergency Services since July 4th and the first earthquake. Following the event last night, we went ahead and deployed all the key federal agencies and departments up here to work with OES and state agencies to make sure that if there's any resource that the state needs to aid those impacted, that it's available and ready. We've gone ahead and pre-positioned some resources and we'll continue to coordinate with the state. As Mark had talked about, the next step is actually doing preliminary damage assessments to see if what other federal authorities may be brought to bear to help those in the recovery of this event. That concludes my briefing. Thank you.
So we just came out of an hour-long briefing with the governor, and to reiterate the priorities that he set for us, and what we'll continue to work here in the State Operations Center over the next operational period is to obviously continue to support the efforts to protect lives and property and the environment throughout this throughout the response phase as we transition from response into recovery. Continue to coordinate all the emergency operations that we're doing here and in our regional centers and at the local EOCs. Work to make sure that all of the critical infrastructure lifeline restoration gets done in this next operational period working with our private sector utility partners, telecoms, and supply chain management groups. We'll continue to provide accurate public information as to what's happening with regards to the response and recovery. And then we'll focus on meeting whatever unmet needs are throughout the region for health and medical and people with access and functional needs. Let me just say also that as we transition to recovery today, it's sort of two things happening. We're still responding, but we're moving into place these assets that really can focus on determining the total amount of damage, and so that we can really start to work progressively to get individuals and the community back up on in the normal way of life. So that is going to be a big focus and we will probably, as the operational period goes on into tonight, tomorrow, you'll see some transitioning of response resources being demobilized and different resources being activated to be able to cover the various kinds of needs that will take place. And so the State Operations Center here with all the state and federal and private sector resources will remain fully activated until further notice. With that, happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any details on the number of injuries and the severity of those?
I don't have the final number of injuries. We do know that there were a number of injuries, and but most of them I would characterize in the minor to moderate level, and no report of any fatalities. So I think we're very lucky there, and happy there wasn't anything worse.
Can you talk about the conversations you've been having with the private utilities, especially as it pertains to gas lines, and then you have this added concern with wildfire potential?
Well, you know, we've been working very closely with the utilities over the course of the last few months in the effort of preparing communities as a result of public safety power shutoffs. And so that's helped to build that coalition in the effort of making sure that communities are as prepared as possible. We generally have, though, here embedded in the State Operations Center, the California Utility Emergency Association. It is an association that represents all of the power, water, wastewater utility providers and telecommunications. They're embedded here, and they have been working very, very diligently, ensuring that that the priority to get power to things like the hospital is done first, and then, you know, as they move forward and branch out, that the rest of the community gets back up and operational. Right now, there's a big effort on doing gas leak detection, so they've got a lot of sniffer vehicles out there and other kinds of equipment to ensure that that the gas mains or the gas lines get fixed. That's going to always be an issue after an earthquake, and that could take a few days to be able to address that.
I want to go over safety tips for people that they tend to forget how to act if an earthquake happens.
Yeah. So, well, the first thing is that if you're in a structure and you start to feel an aftershock or another earthquake, you want to drop, cover, and hold on. The idea is to get under something that is strong and heavy that will protect you in the event of anything that may be falling. You want to cover the back of your head and crouch down under that heavy piece of furniture. Standing in doorways is not a good idea. Standing next to a refrigerator is not a good idea. Refrigerators will move significantly and doors swing. Best to get down underneath something that's solid and in place to be able to protect yourself. If you're driving, pull to the side of the road, put your car in park and stop in a safe location until the shaking stops. Really not want to go running outside. If you're in a high rise, use the stairwells after the shaking stops to go down the stairwells. Do not use the elevator. Be cognizant of things like glass that may be on the ground or falling glass above you if you do go outdoors. Important to have an emergency kit and some supplies. If you have not gotten those yet, go to one of the stores that's open and get some water and supplies in the event that there is an aftershock. The potential is, talking with California Geologic Survey and the United States Geologic Survey, the seismologist, there is, will be a significant number of aftershocks, but there is a 5% chance that you could get another earthquake as large as this earthquake last night. So we want to make sure that people over the next 24 to 48 hours are prepared and cognizant of what to do should more earthquakes occur. Any other questions? Okay, great. We'll do a follow-up press conference as announced, possibly later tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. Thank you very much.